Hello.
Hi, Bruce. What are you
Hi.
doing here? I'm just,
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing today?
Very good. We were just having a bit of a laugh, a joke. The 30-second countdown that comes on this, it when I've seen it, it kind of speeds up and slows down a little bit. So I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Sometimes you're sitting there like trying to speed it up or wind it up.
You
So how
figured
are you?
out the technology. It's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing really good. It's been nice sunny weather here in California where I am. So can't complain about that. I always appreciate seeing the sun. How are you?
Well, I'm in Scotland, and if you mention this word "sun" again, I can quite easily mute you.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not actually. It's been really nice here in Scotland. Anyway, the last couple of days, it's been 10 degrees, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. But it's yeah, it's been warm for this time of year here, which is good.
That's nice. I know that, I'm from a climate that's pretty cold 6 months out of the year. So that's why I came to California because I was like, I need warmth and sunshine. But I want to
Yeah,
come where you are sometime and see that region.
we'll have to do a trip here one year and then a trip to California next year.
Yeah, we could do a house swap. You could stay here and I'll stay at your place.
Yeah. So we were just chatting a few seconds ago about different things, and what I was going to say was it might be an idea just to kick off with anyone that's listened or who's watching for the first time. What we're obviously going to talk about the Sinclair method for the next hour or so. What is the Sinclair method? Is probably a good place to start.
Sure. Yeah. You want me to take that one?
Yeah, go.
Cool. So the Sinclair method is a very powerful treatment protocol that has a 78% success rate. It's been clinically proven to. And it helps people to unlearn alcohol use disorder on a neurological level. This method does take time to work. I sometimes people learn about it and think, oh, this could be like a quick fix to, cure my drinking problem. But it does take time to work. But I think, as you said recently, you said it's not an immediate fix, but it's a permanent one. I think that's what you said. And I think that describes it so well. So, this method works by taking a medication that is an opiate blocker, typically naltrexone, and it's taken in a targeted dose before drinking alcohol. And we call those extinction sessions, or basically you're just drinking on the naltrexone. And over time, when you do this repeatedly over many months, what happens is the medication is blocking the endorphin reward our brain usually gets from alcohol, because when we drink, it's this flood of endorphins, and it's very pleasurable, which is why alcohol can be so addicting, because it gives us such a positive reinforcement. And so this medication blocks that. A lot of people wonder if it makes you sick, or are there really negative effects to it? But in most cases, people can still enjoy drinking on the medication. It just, what happens is, it's less of that euphoria hit, so to speak. And so over time, what happens for people is they're drinking on the medication and they might have one or two drinks and feel satisfied and not want more than that, or they're able to have alcohol-free days much more easily. And for most people, their cravings for alcohol continue to fade away the longer they're on this method. So it really gives people back control over alcohol. It gives people an off switch. Of course, like in the work you and I do, we really couple this medication assisted therapy with behavior change and lifestyle change and habit change, because what many people find is that the medication works amazingly well to kind of undo the burning desire to drink. But then, if you're someone who's drinking every night a bottle of wine, it's like, okay, well, how else am I going to spend my evenings? How else am I going to cope with these stressful life events? A lot of people realize a few months into the method, they're like, wow, I'm drinking out of habit. I didn't realize how much this is like an ingrained habit, and I don't know what else to do instead when I'm cooking dinner or watching Netflix or whatever it is. So the medication is such a powerful component, but it's only a piece of it. And the other piece is really the habit and lifestyle change. And that just takes time. The average time to extinction, we hear a lot of physicians say, is 9 months. Some people reach it much more quickly. Others, it takes longer. And this method, one of the most appealing things about it is that it doesn't require abstinence. So people are still drinking on the the method as long as they're taking the medication before. Some people, like myself, end up going sober because you just lose interest in alcohol over time. That wasn't my plan, but that's where I wound up. And for others, they keep alcohol in their life and drink socially or moderately. And so it really gives people the choice and the control back over alcohol. What would you add to that, or what did I leave out?
That's probably one of the best explanations I've heard for a long time.
Oh, great.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. And the word control that you said there is something I've actually spoken to 3 clients today about, was about control and how, as you go through the process, the control, when people come onto the Sinclair method, alcohol is controlling an element, either a small or a large or all of that individual's life. And what I find the Sinclair method is doing, it's clawing back the control. So whether someone is a low to middle end drinker or if they're a chronic drinker, the program works just as well for everybody, but you're clawing back the control. So you know yourself, with a lot of people, it can be a case that they are working out what time they're going to start drinking, how they're going to get the wine from the supermarket, and when I go out to someone's house, will there be enough wine? Do I need a bottle of wine in the car? All this kind of stuff. But as you go through the process, you then start to claw back all these things, so you don't have to arrange your whole life around when am I going to get the next drink. So yeah, absolutely. Sorry, just very quickly, if anyone is here for the first time, if you've got any questions at all, feel free to put it in the chat and Katie will answer them.
Yep. No, I'm here all night. No.
Yeah, if you've got any questions or if there's anything you just want to add or put onto it, then again, yep, feel free just to fire away in the comments. So.
Yeah, or just to say hello that you're here or where you're coming from. Always nice to see where people are coming from. Yeah, but you were just saying the control. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to conceive, because me too, I was like, my whole life revolves around alcohol. I love to drink every day or when I'm doing this or that. And so it was hard to imagine that not being the case. And so it's really kind of surprising and amazing how this method works to gradually give you back that control. And you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't think about drinking today, or oh my gosh, I didn't finish my whole glass of wine. It's just this really process of like gradually undoing the grip that alcohol can have over us.
And I've been absolutely, again today, I mean, I've been off for a few days, so I've rebooked or rescheduled a lot of appointments. So today I've had like phone call after phone call after phone call. And it's been absolutely fascinating the number of times the same subjects just keep coming up again and again and again. And control is one of them, absolutely. And a lot of the what I'm starting to call, well, have done for a while, but abstinent-based thinking. That I was speaking to a couple of clients today that in 1930, can you hear an echo somewhere?
I don't hear an echo.
I think I've got 2 computers on here. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's my sound check. What was I saying? Been chatted away. Abstinent-based. I've been speaking to a lot of people about the abstinent-based thinking, and the challenge we have, I think, today is that we always say this every week, and just in case anyone's new, we will support any program that works for anybody. So we don't care what it is. However, what we do say is that in 1935, 1939, in that period, they started the abstinent-based 12-step program. And then over the years, what has happened is that's then branched out into CA, NA, SMART meetings, other recovery meetings, peer support groups. You've also got rehab centers that have started up, but they've all taken the same model that was started in 1935, 1939, and they've taken that model and they've just repackaged it in a different way. So residential rehab is more of a residential 12-step abstinent program. AACA, SMART meetings, they're all very good programs. They're peer support groups with abstinent-based programs. So they're all based on the same kind of model. The difference is what we're doing is we're not an abstinent-based program because we're coming at from a medical, we're not medically trained, but we're coming at it from a neurological medical place where we're saying, okay, some people, when they drink alcohol, it releases too much endorphin in the brain. So there is a medication on the market today that can treat it. So if it can be treated, it stops the relapse happening, and the success rate goes absolutely through the roof. Which my background was abstinence-based programs, rehab centers, and they were amazing people worked in it, amazing people came into the rehab, but the relapse rates were really high. I have been blown away with the level of, well, I don't know if I'm correct saying this, you could probably correct me or just give some more information on it, Katie, but I'm starting to realize that, or I'm questioning, is relapse possible as long as people take the medication? I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either, Bruce.
No.
The key is they need to take the medication, but I felt relapse proof through TSM. I was like, this is always going to protect me. I'm never going to go on that crazy binge cycle that I would go on before.
We don't have time tonight, or we'll do it on another night, but from a neurological process, if you're taking naltrexone, it's reducing the amount of endorphin. And therefore, the only reason a relapse happened, and I won't go into the whole thing, but I suddenly realized it the other day. I thought, as long as you take the medication, relapse is not going to happen. Because I've been speaking to a lot of couples recently, and you're speaking to either the husband or the wife who they've never been through the process, so they're struggling a little bit. They're supporting the partners, but as the partner is reducing, the worry is that at some point, like has possibly happened in the past, they're going to relapse, and it's going to spiral out of control and go back to, and that's the root cause of any fear or anxiety within couples. But then I've said to a few couples, I said, I don't have the research papers or anything to show it, but I actually don't think relapse is possible. And then when I said that, I thought, wow, I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't think it is.
Especially because naltrexone and the Sinclair method are helping to squash the alcohol deprivation effect, which was part of David Sinclair's research, which for those who don't know what that means, it's just essentially what he found in his research is he had this group of rats that were dependent on alcohol, and he removed the alcohol from them so they couldn't drink. And he found that the longer they didn't consume alcohol, the more their motivation increased for it, or the more their craving intensified for it. And so when he reintroduced the alcohol, the rats would binge drink on it at a rate 15 times higher than what their drinking was previously. And he did the same research on apes, which I know that might be controversial for some people to hear that, but it just shows, like, it's the same thing with humans. If we try an abstinence-based approach, and I hear you talk about this all the time, Bruce, the number one cause of relapse is that craving, and that craving comes because we're depriving ourselves of something that we're neurologically dependent upon. And so the longer we're abstinent, the more our cravings will intensify. I just had someone comment on my YouTube channel. They were 18 months sober through AA, but they said they thought about alcohol every single day. And so it's like, we're not saying if someone's sober, they should do TSM. That's a very complicated situation to be in. But just to illustrate that sobriety does not equal, free from alcohol. In fact, for me, it was like, I could make it 6 months. That was the longest time, but I was always in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm going to drink again one day. I just know it's going to happen because I can only white knuckle this for so long. And so you're absolutely right with naltrexone. It's dealing with the alcohol deprivation effect. We're allowed to drink. And so we're not getting into this state of, needing alcohol and binging on it. The option is there to drink. And so long as we're always taking the medication, we are protected and truly relapse proof.
Which, because we've been around it for so long, to me, it just sounds natural just to say that. But when I step back into my head, which is not a good place to be, when I step back into my head, when I was in abstinence-based programs or I was in rehab management, if someone had said that to me 4 years ago, I would have argued it till I was blue in the face.
Yeah.
I would have said, no, that is not possible. You cannot do that. That's just, and actually I did that when I first heard about Sinclair Method. I didn't just argue it. I got really, really angry because I thought that's wrong, because that's unethical. It's just wrong. But then when you do the research and you look into the science, I've spoken to a couple of new clients today, and we've just been talking through the process and the difference. But and one of the clients has been has a history, not a history, but a couple of residential stays in rehab that hasn't worked for them. And when I started explaining how the process works, what causes addiction in the brain, how the Sinclair method works to overcome that, you can see people's faces, one, just light up. And the fact that the hard part of it is people come to you with, I can see people when I'm talking, I always do a Zoom meeting to this stage. And I saw this gentleman's eyes just light up today, as if to say, there is hope. Because he had tried 2 or 3 different ways, and there's nothing wrong with the ways that he tried. For him, it just didn't work for him. But then all of a sudden, you can see people slowly over a period of years that they try sober October, and they try January, and they maybe try AA, and they try, again, nothing wrong with these programs, but for whatever reason doesn't work for them. Each time someone tries it, the hope gets less and less and less and less.
Exactly.
And I think when we speak to them, Katie, the one thing I love about speaking to new clients is the hope, it just opens the hope up again. And that's where I take it really, really, and I know you do too, but once you open up that hope to someone, we've got to make sure that we can back it up.
Yeah, no, it's such an amazing method. And, it truly, like, I always felt a victim to my drinking problems. Like, I had no way out. Like, it was stronger than me in a sense. And I was like, could only control it to a certain point. But with the Sinclair method, it was like, it gave me back that control. And I would often say I felt empowered over alcohol, where I was now calling the shots in this relationship that I had with it. And it was no longer me being at the whim of my intense alcohol cravings, or like if I had a bad day, I had to have that drink. It was like I taught myself over time that, like, okay, I had a bad day, but alcohol is just like one option. Like, what else can I do to cope? Because what I realized, like, several months into the Sinclair method, was that I really needed to change my relationship to alcohol, like how I relate to it and the role that it played in my life. And that was honestly a challenging place to be, because I realized, I can't really use alcohol in the same way anymore. It's not going to be that best friend that I turn to when I have a stressful week or whatever. And so that's when I realized how important it was for me to learn new ways to cope. Because I had the option to keep drinking on naltrexone, and I saw that I was doing that kind of habitually. And, my brain was so used to turning to alcohol to kind of unwind. But I didn't want to be that person anymore that relied so much on alcohol. At the time, I wanted alcohol in my life, but I wanted to be in control over it and enjoy it, at dinner or at social functions. But I didn't want it to be this thing I was like doing, almost every day, just as like, because I needed it. And so just to speak to that, I used to think it was kind of cheesy, like change your relationship to alcohol. I was like, that's dumb, but it really is true, because it's this, like, we become very intimate with it, because it becomes this reliable thing that's there for us through thick and thin and good and bad. We turn to it for a lot of things. And so it is such an important part of this journey. And I think where I see a lot of people, I see some people in the chat who are kind of new to the method or have been on it for a little while. We really do have to teach ourselves new ways to cope and really get clear on the relationship we want to have with alcohol and the identity we want to have around alcohol. Because if we don't do that, I think we can get stuck. And I see people drinking habitually or more than they want to, or they're having a hard time getting alcohol-free days because they're so entrenched in the habit piece still, which the good news is, like, we can change that. And it makes it so much easier to do with the Sinclair method, because we're not craving alcohol as much. It might be a little uncomfortable, but, one place I always started was like, okay, I could drink tonight, and that's an option on the table. I'm not saying I'm not going to drink, but let me try having a hot bath or a cup of tea or going for a walk or watching some funny videos online. Let me try that first and see how I feel in an hour. If I still really want to drink, I'll let myself drink. But I was constantly interrupting that cycle that would play out over and over again, just so I could teach myself new ways to respond to, uncomfortable emotions. But yeah, so I know that's part of the work you and I both do, because, the pill is amazing. It is magical in some sense, but it's not the whole equation for success on the method.
Yeah. And like you're saying, there's a few people. There's a lady, I won't mention any names just in case it comes up, from, I can never say it, Herefordshire, who is on a second attempt at TSM.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Go for it. Very, very quick bit of advice. You'll notice with most people, you'll get a 30 to 50% drop initially when you first go on the medication. It will then level out. So once you get that 30 to 50% drop, it will then level out for a period of time. And at that period, the reduction side of it will slow down. And you need to just make very little habitual changes from week to week to week to week. Little changes each week, and keep a record of how much you're drinking on a day-to-day basis, and you'll notice that it will start to drop. But just remember that the second stage is a lot slower than the first one. So if you keep a record of it, it will make it a lot easier to see your progress and success. And another lady as well that agreed with me, who says, Katie, I loved your explanation of TSM.
Awesome.
So again, I won't mention, she won't mind me mentioning any names, but I know her quite well. She's a lovely lady too. So absolutely lovely lady. And then another lady has said, my name is such and such. I listed it out there. I've been taking naltrexone for 6 weeks. It's been working great for me to moderate my drinking. Fantastic. Just keep doing what you're doing. And binge drinkers, do you need to drink more regularly? We'll cover that one a little bit in a second. And the initial lady, I definitely plan on tracking this time. Yeah, the idea of tracking is not just to keep an idea of the figures, but it will show you a lot of things. It will show you the figure at the end of the month or the week. It will show you the patterns that start to appear as you go along. And the second stage is a lot slower than the first stage. The first one is an initial drop. And if you don't keep a track of it, things will change very, very, not very slowly, but the idea is to do it slowly and sustainably through the habitual side, so that, and if you keep a track of it, you'll then notice that you'll see your success. So the tracking we'll need to do one night a big session on tracking. Binge drinkers, any wisdom for binge drinkers, Katie?
Yeah, it's interesting. We just did a course video on this in our program. So it is TSM certainly works for binge drinkers, but there is kind of a more specific approach that I think can be helpful. And when we're talking about binge drinkers, technically binge drinking is like, here in the States at least, it's like 4 or more drinks for a woman and 5 or more for a man in a 2-hour period. But when I talk about binge, like I was a binge drinker, I was like a daily binge drinker, drinking a bottle of wine every day. But when I'm talking about binge drinking for TSM, it's more around the people who may have a longer period of alcohol-free days, like they might have all week alcohol-free or a month alcohol-free, but then when they drink again, it's just like maybe a day or several days or weeks long binge where it kind of spirals out of control. So for that case, what I've found, and I'm curious to hear how you work with this style of drinker as well, Bruce, is that it can be helpful to have more structured, planned drinking sessions or extinction sessions instead of waiting for that once in a while binge. For example, I had a client, he was a binge drinker on Saturday nights. Like that was his one day a week that he drank, but it was like horribly destructive every time he did it. And so for him, he was planned 2 additional drinking sessions during the week as he got started on the method. I think it was like a Tuesday and a Thursday. And he would have a lot of intentionality around it. His wife was supporting him. He would intentionally go to the store and buy like light beers so he could, really view it as a treatment. But by having those additional extinction sessions, it's doing a couple things. It's kind of training you that, not every drinking session has to lead to a binge, but it's also allowing you to lay the foundation for extinction. Because if we're just taking naltrexone once a week, for example, and we're kind of waiting until that desire gets so intense, what can happen is we can outdrink the medication. And so if we're drinking more regularly, we're helping to lay that foundation of extinction inside of our brain, because with each drinking session on naltrexone, it's a cumulative result. And so, if someone's been on the method for a week, they're going to see X number of or X amount of progress. But if you've been on it for 6 months, in most cases, especially if people are working on the habit change piece, those results are just going to add up over time, and the interest in alcohol continues to fade away. They continue to reduce their drinking. So it's really helpful to have multiple extinction sessions in a week that are more planned and structured, and really viewing this like a treatment, and not waiting for that once in a while binge, and of course avoiding hard alcohol. I don't know if you're someone who drinks hard alcohol, but that's another thing, because with binge drinkers, I know if hard alcohol is part of that equation, that can also overpower the medication. So just keeping those things in mind. Yeah. What would you say, Bruce?
Binge drinking is an interesting one. and very, very treatable with TSM. Very, very treatable. Again, there's 2 or 3 different ways of approaching it. One thing, when I talk about binge drinking, I always talk about dry January or sober October or things like that. Anyone that knows me or that has worked with me, I hate dry January and sober October with a passion. And please let me explain that before anyone goes, "Oh, it's good." Because dry January and sober October done too often creates binge drinkers, which is why I don't like it. That one's got a title. If someone goes in an abstinent-based program and they go a month or 2 months without drinking and then they relapse, you're creating exactly the same thing. But what causes the binge drinking is a period of abstinence. During that period of abstinence, the craving will build and build and build. Dr. Sinclair would call it the deprivation effect. So the craving will build and build and build and build. And then at the end of the period of abstinence, people will give in to the craving. They'll have a drink. There'll be a massive rush of endorphin through the body. They'll then go bang straight back into a high level of drinking again. And each time someone goes back to drinking again on the binge, most of the time it increases the amount they're drinking. Now, what I've found with working with binge drinkers is that everyone's period between the binges is different. However, it's quite methodical. It's quite, what's the word? There's a very obvious pattern that comes around. So with some people, it'll be a week. Some people, it'll be a month. Some people, it'll be 6 months. And it can sometimes be to the day. So whatever that period is, what you'll find is people will have a period of time off. The craving will build. They'll have a drink. Bang. If someone's drinking a bottle, well, say they're drinking 20, 30, 40 units in a day, they'll go back to drinking that. And 9 times out of 10, have they've had a period of abstinence, they'll go back to drinking a little bit more and then a little bit more. And then over a period of time, that period during the binges will get less and less and less and less. And that's how you end up with someone who's drinking a bottle of vodka a day. So that's it. Someone doesn't go from having a weekend drink to a bottle of vodka a day. It's a process. So what I would normally do with someone who's a binge drinker is I would get them onto the medication. I would get them established on the medication. I would get them through a period of time when we can assess and analyze how they're responding to the medication. And then I would okay, so say someone's drinking huge drink all day, all weekend, but they're sober during the week, and then bang, they go at the weekend, all weekend. So what I'd do is I'd get them on the medication. I would see what kind of response we've had to the medication, how much control it is. And just like Katie was saying, I would then, after a period of a month or 2 months of them being on the medication and got used to the medication and the way the process works, is I would introduce very controlled drinking sessions during the week. And when I say a drinking session, I don't mean a big bottle of vodka kind of thing. A very, very controlled. Okay, we would plan it, arrange it, organize it, and say, okay, tonight, take your pill and have 2 drinks or 3 drinks, whatever is the level that you can work with. But what we're doing is we're leveling it out. If you're having binges, you're having bang, 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 bang in it with periods in between. But what I'm trying to do is level it out with less over a longer period. Once we get that over a period, we can then reduce the whole lot down. If that makes sense.
No, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think you hit on it right there. Like there might be more planning involved with binge style drinkers. For daily drinkers, a good place to start is just to start taking the naltrexone before, your first drink of the day and that targeted dose and tracking your drinks. Those are kind of like the simplest place to start. So you don't feel overwhelmed and just get acclimated to the medication and all of that. But for binge drinkers, I think it can be beneficial to have more planning around it, like you were saying, because, we don't want to have, like the person in here mentioned, yes, I normally drink nothing for weeks, then begin slowly on wine daily. Then after a few weeks, go heavy for a week, possibly go into hard alcohol for a few days. And that just is exactly what you were saying, Bruce. Like there's typically a methodical process around the binge drinking. So, yeah. Planning more sessions ahead of that so that it doesn't lead into that binge, because there can also be temptation to skip naltrexone if you're kind of into a binge and, drinking. Some people drinking round the clock. It's like, who's going to remember to take naltrexone during that time? So, yeah, but it is definitely possible.
Yeah. And it's and quite often you don't actually have to go down that. I've had a few guys that are binge drinkers, and it literally gets, if you're managing a week or 2 weeks or a few weeks in between, quite often it will reduce the binge dramatic. Like I said, you'll get a 30 to 50% drop. Quite often, if someone's drinking, let's have a look. So if you're going on to hard liquor, in the UK we would call that spirit. If you're going on to spirits, so if you're going to drink, say someone's not drinking anything, I'm not saying this lady's doing this, but if you're drinking nothing for ages and then you go on a binge with drinking spirit or hard liquor, as you'd call it in the States, if you're drinking a bottle of vodka a day on that binge, quite often when you'll see a 30 to 50% drop, whether you're a binge drinker or a daily drinker or whatever. So you will see a huge drop in that on what you're binging. So quite often that's enough of a drop to then be able to bring everything under control. So that's why I say it's a good idea to assess. I mean, the nice thing with the Sinclair method is everybody's different. And the reason why I'm just going to promote Katie and ourselves for a second, but the medication will do. I've seen Katie, some of your stuff as well, and I believe I reckon it does about 50%. The other part of it is knowing what to do and when to do it, and having someone who knows to guide you through from stage to stage to stage, or just to say, right, okay, you're doing well at the moment, keep going, or do this, or try that, or change something else. And I know, hi Gary, how you doing? Part of the beauty of drinking on naltrexone is that it's guilt-free because it's therapeutic. The guilt, again, I had a huge session with a guy today. Yesterday. And it was all about what we were talking about at the beginning, abstinent-based thinking. We are so programmed within alcohol recovery to think that you have to be abstinent, and that if you put your hand up and say, I'm struggling with my alcohol intake, the only solution is abstinence. On the Sinclair method, my standard mantra to my clients is, I don't care how much you drink, but if I ever find out that you haven't taken a pill, I do an assessment with clients, so I've got their addresses. I said, I've got your address. I will drive to your front door and I will ram a pill down your throat. Now, I don't do that, obviously, but yeah, it takes the guilt away. I mean, the Sinclair method, again, we probably don't have time just now to go into it, but it removes the guilt completely. It removes the shame. When people start to realize that alcohol dependency, or AUD, is a medical condition of the brain that is treatable with medication, and it's not a moral failing, and it's not a spiritual shortfall, then you'll then realize that it takes away all that guilt. It's not your fault that you keep relapsing. You're fighting a monster that is huge. Yeah. Huge. So
yeah, because when you're stuck in that and you're craving alcohol, the natural thing to do is to drink, to scratch that itch, so to speak, because it becomes so intense and unbearable and such a distraction that to not do it is just like torture almost. And so, like someone said in here, it's or Gary said it, I think it's guilt-free because it's therapeutic. We allow ourselves to drink. For me, I was like thinking, oh, I can surrender to my craving. I can give in to this craving that feels so natural to do, because my brain, as we know, when we have alcohol use disorder, it's equating alcohol to a survival need. So our brain is looking for it as if it might look for water if we're dying of thirst, or food if we're starving. And I know that's not a perfect comparison, because we really do need those things to live. But that's how our brain becomes hijacked, is that it's equating alcohol to a survival need. And so with this method, we're people who experience alcohol use disorder, we have cravings for it, and it allows us to give into that, and it's like scratching that itch. But while we're doing it, we're kind of like going in the back door and undoing this disorder in our brain. And so I would, the first month or two, it did feel a little bit weird to allow myself to drink, but I was really big on, telling myself, like, don't beat yourself up for drinking right now, because if you're complying with the medication, you are undoing this in your brain. It doesn't matter if, you're drinking because you're sad or happy, or you drank more than you planned. It's just like you're working to undo this little by little every time you drink on the medication. And so I know that is a challenge for people to get their heads around, especially if they've tried the abstinence approach over and over and over again. But yeah, it's such a gentle way to go about it that is so effective for most people. It's just incredible.
It's a bit like a comfort blanket.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I always say, right?
I have to credit Katie with that. That's Katie's expression, which I found absolutely fantastic. And it's a comfort blanket that it's a very nice, gentle, graceful, kind, forgiving way of reducing your alcohol and getting control back of your drinking.
Yeah.
Rather than a very abrupt, sudden bang into a wall where you've got to stop drinking. When abstinence-based programs work for a lot of people, and for those people, fantastic. Keep going with it, stick with it, and everything else. But we're just looking at reasons why, with some people, it hasn't worked for them. So therefore, there's another option. But what happens with abstinence-based programs is that people have been drinking at whatever level they've been drinking for X amount of years. They've been getting a huge endorphin reward for that. Now, when you stop drinking, you will go through, in a lot of cases, a detox. You'll go through withdrawal, and your brain will go from very high reward of endorphin down to next to nothing in regards to alcohol. So then what happens is that you've then got to then the craving starts to build day on day on day on day. So you're fighting, most people in abstinence-based programs are fighting the craving hour upon hour upon hour. It's not day upon day, it's hour upon hour upon hour. Then what happens is they're fighting the craving, but then they also got to deal with everyday life, because all of a sudden they don't have alcohol to cope with the issues that come along, or the celebrations, or the weddings, or the party, or the Christmas, or the loss of a loved one. And when that situation hits and all of a sudden you have no alcohol, it becomes a huge, it becomes, how am I going to cope with this? How am I going to deal with it? So therefore, a lot of times people will think, oh, I'll have one drink, and bang, you're back into it. Whereas the beautiful thing with the Sinclair method is you can reduce slowly. And if you hit a life situation, you can stop reducing for a period of time, as long as you're at a safe level. Stop reducing, cope with the circumstances, deal with the circumstances until that's leveled out and gone away, and then you can carry on. And it's just a beautiful thing. The lady here as well said she went from 120 to 140 units down to 30 to 40 units. I'm guessing that's from the initial drop, because like I said, I ask clients to send me a weekly drink diary, and I see with almost every single client there's a 30 to 50% drop. Sometimes in this case it's more. So yeah, that kind of drop is very, very common. That's probably a bit more than what it normally is, but if that's what it is, it is. It's for an individual person. So, so sorry, Katie, I went off on one there.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, and I know that's a concern for some people. They get going on the method and they see this amazing drop, which a lot of people have coined the honeymoon period. And then they get concerned that, oh my goodness, my drinking is going back up. But that's pretty typical for this method. So if you're watching this and that's happened to you, it's kind of part of this process. And that's where the work Bruce and I do come in, because the habit piece is so strong. Like, our brains, once they acclimate to the medication, it can kind of fight the medication. And, if you're used to drinking a bottle of wine every night, that's a dose of alcohol. And so you can just continue to, mindlessly pour that amount. Before you know it, the bottle's gone and you haven't really checked in to see, do I really want it? Where's my craving level? But really, that's just the habit you were in. I know, because that was my habit. And I would see, okay, I want to pay attention. I want to chart my drinks. I want to have a water between my drinks. I want to see, how is my craving level? Do I really want this? Let me wait 30 minutes and see if I wanted it, at that time. We've really got to bring mindfulness and habit change to the TSM journey. And that's really what's going to help to continue to reduce from there. But it can be done gradually, and, it's not abrupt like the abstinence-based approaches. And that was the challenge I always had with those. It was like I would watch these inspirational stories of people who got sober, and, they would tell how their life was improved and all of this, but I never understood how they stayed sober. Like, I was like, how did they get past those cravings? Like, I just, no matter what program or person or guidelines I was trying to follow, it was like nothing was getting to the root cause of the problem, which was my craving for drinking. So that's what TSM did.
And so that's something that's dawned on me today that I was going to mention tonight. And again, it's just a a revelation that I've had today about something. But again, I was chatting away to someone today about craving and habit. And anyone that knows me as well, they know that there are two sides to alcohol dependency, or AUD. One side is the craving, which is your body's physical requirement, the brain and the body's physical requirement for alcohol. The other side is the habitual side, which includes emotional, psychological, circumstantial reasons. What I've suddenly realized today was all the work that we used to do in rehab centers and abstinent-based programs is when what causes the dependency is craving on one side and the habit on the other side, which includes emotional, psychological stuff. So what the rehab and all the other programs are trying to do is to get through to the habitual side, to work on all the habitual side. But the problem that they have is that they never get past the craving, because the craving is so strong. When someone stops, the craving is going and going and going and going and going. Now you can, and we did it in rehab, you can put people through. We had a program, we had group work every single morning of the week for 6 months. So we put, after 6 months, well, why can't you stay sober now? And then if they did relapse, well, you obviously didn't do your program well enough, or you didn't do the group work enough. But the real reason, now that I look back on it, it was nothing to do with all that group work we did was fantastic, but we hadn't dealt with the craving.
Yeah.
And the craving is going to beat that 6 months of work every single time, every time. So until you deal with the craving, you can never get through to doing the work on the habitual side. And that's where I think we do, not us, but the TSM. All you have to do to deal with the craving side is pop the pill. It's that simple. However, you can then get through to the habitual, emotional, psychological side, and then you can then work on that side of things, and then you have full recovery. But if you don't get through past the craving, if you never deal with the craving, I heard someone say that if you've got someone who's just gone abstinent and they go in for counseling, they're not going to hear anything that you say in a group work or anything. All they're going to hear is blah, 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 because all their head is saying, I need a drink, I need a drink, I need a drink, I need a drink. Yep. That's all they're hearing, is craving. So if you don't get past the craving, you can do as much group work as you want for as long as you want. It's not going to work. No, it's not going to work. But
it works for some people. It really does. And hats off to them, because believe me, I tried dozens of times. I was like, well, if it worked for this person, I can do it. And I couldn't get past the craving, which is what naltrexone works with. And it makes it possible. Like I mentioned earlier, after a few months on this method, I would be able to take a break. I'd have 2 drinks and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take a break for 30 minutes, maybe take a shower, clean the kitchen, do something. And then if I want to drink again in 30 minutes, I will. Before TSM and naltrexone, that was pretty much impossible. I would be watching the clock, 30 minutes would be up. I'd be like, give me my wine. But with the Sinclair method, it was like, I could take that break and I would forget about drinking. Sometimes I would pick up and continue to drink again. What I found oftentimes was actually taking a break really helped me to get rid of the urge. Like by the time 30 minutes was up, I would be like, meh, I don't really feel like it anymore. And that was absolutely not possible before the Sinclair method. Like I said, my craving for it would just intensify the longer I would go without it, if I had already tempted myself with the first 2 drinks. And I've honestly seen this with clients as well, where they'll be out with friends, on the Sinclair method and have a couple drinks, and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go home and open up that bottle of wine that I have. And by the time they leave the bar, go home, get home, they're like, I don't really feel like drinking anymore. And so it's something about taking this break. The longer you're on TSM, that's just like a mindfulness practice that can really, really help people, especially if you're also drinking with food in your stomach. That's another big one. I would find that if I drank on the naltrexone and had a meal with it, I was like, I could have, after a few months on the method, I could have like a couple of drinks and genuinely not want more, which just wasn't true before TSM.
It's a little bit of a brain, we call it a brain mince here in Scotland. I don't know
I think I know what you mean.
That kind of translates into American. It just the Sinclair method really messes with the mind, especially if you have worked with abstinent-based, or you've been through abstinent-based programs, and yeah, I mean the Scottish government just recently have started putting adverts out just now about we need to help the people. We need to help people struggling with addiction rather than treating them as whatever we treat them as, and which is a good start. But I think the Sinclair Method, like I said, if you've worked in the industry, when I first heard about it, I just if anyone hasn't seen it and you're new here, if you go into YouTube, and Claudia Christian's TED Talk was the one that I heard first of all, and I switched it off and I thought, what an absolute load of rubbish. And that's the polite version. But the more you look into this, if you're new to it, all that Katie, I know Katie will back this up as well, is that just look into the science. It will cover anything you read about it. The more you read about it, even now, the more I look at it, the more incredible the process becomes. And don't complicate it. Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. The process, again, I was speaking to a client today, and I was reading, there's a book called where's my camera? There it is. Called The Cure for Alcoholism by Dr. Roy Escarpa. And that explains the medical proven way to eliminate alcohol addiction. So that's specifically for the Sinclair Method. And I hadn't read it before, but I read it just the other day where it said that in the laboratory trials, there was 100% success rate with the rats that they were using. Which again, that's a bit some people might not like that, but unfortunately that's the way it was done. But they had 100% success rate. And when I realized that, I thought, wow, that's incredible. Now that is in a controlled environment. It's with rats. We're not rats. Yeah. But when it came to the human clinical trials, there was a 78% success rate. And Dr. Sinclair, I believe, then said, well, listen, for the 22% that it didn't work for, it didn't work because they didn't take the medication for whatever psychological, emotional, whatever reasons why. But 78% success, don't complicate it. Don't change it, is my... If you take the medication, keep a record, and get yourself into a support group of some sort, or support with Katie in America, ourselves in the UK, success goes through the roof. So.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful journey, in my opinion. Like, when I started on the Sinclair Method, I thought I just liked to drink. I thought I was like a partier, and I didn't really understand how much I was using alcohol as a coping tool, and at the same time, how much it was keeping me kind of stagnant in life. And so it's very cliche to say, but I will say, as I started to get a glimpse outside of the alcohol use disorder world that I was stuck in for so long, I started to see that really anything was possible in life. You know, when you wake up without a hangover, I was hungover like 3 or 4 days a week, usually, you know, sometimes a mild hangover, sometimes I couldn't even get out of bed. But hangovers were a part of my regular existence. I was just used to feeling sick all of the time, and I'd gotten used to it. And so as I started to feel better and desire alcohol less and appreciate sober Saturday mornings, you know, and without a hangover, it was just like, wow, like life is actually really amazing when you're not dependent on alcohol. And so just to encourage people with that, I think I look back and I'm like, man, alcohol really deceived me into thinking I needed it. You know, I thought I needed it to have fun. I thought I needed it to be funny. And it's all these things you hear people say. But I think going through it and seeing that be true for myself, that, wow, I'm actually much happier with less alcohol or with no alcohol. And I feel more confident in myself. I feel like anything is possible. When I was drinking a lot, just the little things were so hard, even doing laundry or getting my car serviced or things like that. It was like, oh, everything was just like such a burden. And now it's so amazing to feel like I can tackle small things in life, but also like go after bigger things because feel healthy and feel like I have a clear mind, and I'm no longer stuck in this cycle of relying on alcohol so much. And so it's such a beautiful journey of kind of self-discovery. And what I loved about it so much is that it was this gentle process. It was like little by little, I would kind of reconnect with myself in a way where I was getting to know myself on a whole new level, because I was struggling with alcohol for 10 years. So it was a huge part of my life that alcohol was like a starring role for me. And so as it started to become less important for me, I was like, well, who do I want to be? Like, what does my life look like when I'm not dependent on alcohol? What is my ideal relationship with alcohol? What do I really want to do? And it started to feel like things were possible again, that I'd kind of like, you know, ignored or put aside because alcohol was always front and center. So It can be such a beautiful journey if we allow it to be. It's not this like forced abstinence, like I can't drink, and like, the labeling of an alcoholic or whatever. In fact, it's just like the opposite of that. You see yourself outgrow alcohol in a sense, and maybe you still have it in your life socially, and that's great. That's one of the awesome things about this option or this method. You can drink, moderately, or maybe you just opt to not drink anymore at all. And so either one is possible. I still I haven't drank in 3.5 years, but I still have naltrexone, and I still entertain the idea of drinking. I love that I have the option on the table if I want to, and that's also what I love so much about this method.
Mm. And I'm going to ask you a couple of loaded questions because I know the answer to them. But a lot of people that have been through abstinent-based programs have stopped for a while, but then have struggled with different things over the period of time. But now that you've stopped, do you get craving or obsessive thinking or any white knuckling as you're going through the process?
Not at all, Bruce. And that's the thing too. It was done gradually over time because the medication was working to fix the brain. I was able to kind of day by day, I mean, how AA says like one day at a time, it's kind of applies here, but day by day, I could teach myself new ways to cope, pick up hobbies that I used to love to do, learn new things to appreciate in life. Like, I love to walk in nature, and I would often take alcohol with me and like go on a hike with vodka. And so when I was doing that, I was actually not in tune to my surroundings. And I remember one time as I was on TSM, I was out on a hike and I smelled this amazing flower, and I realized I'd walk past it over and over again because alcohol had me kind of numbed out to my environment. And I wept. I was like, this is such a beautiful flower. Like I've been ignoring it all this time. But all this to say, like sobriety, I had gotten sober for 6 months one time before TSM, and it was a struggle. It was so hard. I was avoiding people, situations. I was going to bed early because I just didn't want to face the alcohol cravings. It was like, even though I wasn't drinking, my life still revolved around alcohol. But with TSM, it's like true freedom. It's as if the addiction never existed. It's like, I tell people, it feels like it's been erased from my brain. I can be around a party where everyone's drinking and I will have no urge to drink. I often tell people I've never smoked a cigarette. So if people are smoking around me, I'm not like, hey, give me a cigarette. You smoke, I don't smoke. And the same thing has happened with alcohol, where it's like, I don't care if you drink, I don't care if I'm at a bar, but like, I just don't drink anymore. And it's a free feeling. Like I said, it feels like it's been erased from my brain, which is incredible.
And being abstinent that you are, if you, again, it's probably another loaded, well, no, it is another loaded question. But you're abstinent at the moment, but or do you? Is probably the question. Do you? The answer is yes, no. The nice thing is that that if for any reason you decided next week or in a month or 2 months that you thought, well, actually, do you know what? I fancy having a drink or whatever, then you'd be safe because you've got the medication in.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I entertain the idea of drinking. Like my husband's from France, and so there's great wine over there and stuff. And so it's not off the table for me. I just haven't, like I think Dr. Sinclair said in one of his interviews, like people just can't be bothered to drink anymore. I'm just like, meh, like I'd rather not. It's not worth it for me just because I have like zero interest. But I know that if like something happened and I really wanted to drink, I would just take naltrexone and I would drink. And I've been through really hard things in my life since I quit drinking, and turning to alcohol to cope wasn't even a blip on my radar. It just wasn't.
And do you think that that's because you know that when you're on an abstinent-based program, it's the what's the expression? The fruit that you can't eat.
The forbidden fruit.
The forbidden fruit. So you're constantly, well, I can't have it. So therefore, something inside you says, I want it. But the fact that you know that you can have that drink, I'm guessing that takes a lot of the weight off you.
It does. And honestly, I had a lot of extinction sessions or drinking on naltrexone in response to challenging things in life. So when I was on the Sinclair Method, I still drank to cope for probably 6 months of the method, but gradually I was trying new ways to cope. Like I didn't want to keep relying on alcohol. So it's almost like my brain no longer associated alcohol as a coping tool because I did it so many times that like it wasn't giving me the same effects that it used to. And it's like actually taking a hot bath and listening to some music or, getting a massage. Like I know that that's actually going to make me feel better. and help the situation, and alcohol would just it wouldn't help with anything. In fact, could make things worse. And so I think it was having the extinction sessions and no longer equating alcohol to a coping tool gradually over time, getting rid of that craving. And then, it's not the forbidden fruit anymore. Like, I could have drank, but I wanted to be clear-headed. I wanted to feel good. And I'd outgrown alcohol because of the Sinclair Method. It was like, it's not going to do it for me anymore. Someone called the Sinclair Method and naltrexone like a truth serum. Like, you see it for what it really is, and you're like, oh, you're not that cool after all. But it takes time.
Yeah. So, okay, I think we're getting close to that. Yeah. Thanks, Steve, for putting that up. Kim was just asking, UK, an NHS doctor, on the whole, the majority of them won't prescribe Kim if you're in the UK. I'll just stick my number. I don't know if that's going to come up. Yeah, it does. My number's there, Kim, if you want to give me a phone. It depends on whether you want a support program with it. I'll put it up on 3. It's come up on a whole bunch of places. It depends on whether you want a support program with it or whether you're just looking for a prescriber and you've got support with it. Give us a phone and I'll guide you in the right direction for that. No problem with that. And after trying AA and having long periods of abstinence, I'm so happy that there's another way. Kim, it's we're here talking about it. This is what we do. Obviously, we're going to talk positively about it. Do the research, do the study, do the background on it. The Cure for Alcoholism, the book that I showed you, is a great place to start. Just trying to think. There's lots of different places. If you go onto YouTube, there's a lady called Katie Lane who's got hundreds and hundreds of videos on there. Katie is the initial, I would say the original YouTube TSM is what you are.
Sure, why not?
And Katie tracked the whole of her process through TSM, through video, through YouTube. So Katie's got some amazing stuff, and it tracks her whole journey, is the word I was looking for, on it. And again, if you're in the States, Katie and Karen, I need to get Karen on one week.
Yeah.
And have a chat with Karen again. So we need to have a chat whether we do that, how we do that. But yeah, if you're in the States, Thrive Alcohol Recovery. I'll get Katie to tell you a quick bit about it in a second. But they're a really good place to go. And if in the UK, we're alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk. Both got itchy noses tonight.
I know.
Do you want to mention a bit about what you're doing, in the States and now spreading?
Yeah, so been in the Sinclair Method world since 2017 and have coached people the last 3+ years and been a part of the whole community of TSM folks. So started Thrive Alcohol Recovery with another TSM coach and success story, Karen, late last year as an online platform and program to really guide people through the method step by step with video courses and coaching and accountability tools and online private community as well. So this is a program that specializes specifically in the Sinclair Method and kind of the nuances of the method and the challenges that come with it and the successes that come with it. So that's what we offer through Thrive.
Yeah. And someone's just asking, where's Claudia these days? Claudia's still going. I actually got an email from Claudia the other day. I think she's been in London for a little bit of time.
Oh.
And I believe she's in the middle of writing 2 books, which is because I asked her if she would come on and do one of these sessions one night, and she said absolutely. She said, but you need to give me 2 or 3 months because I'm in the middle of writing a couple of books.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, and any plans for her coming over to the UK? She was over just recently, Jane. But yes, that's one thing I'm speaking to her about. She was just before COVID going to come over and do a conference for us here in the UK. So we're going to see if we can get that organized, and then we need to get Katie to come over and speak, and Karen.
That would be fun.
We need to get a TSM or a meetup or a conference or something as well. So I've watched loads of your Thrive videos over the last 2 days. There you go. So,
awesome. Glad. I hope they've been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So, and there's, I don't know, there's plenty more. So if you want to go and watch them all, there's loads of them. So okay, any last bits of wisdom, Katie?
No, I just really love the conversation, and thank you everyone in the chat who was here, and to everyone who watches this in the future, wishing you all the best on the Sinclair Method.
Fantastic. And if you're on the program, my only bit of advice is never, ever, 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 ever miss your pill. If you take your pill, that's a huge chunk of it there. No matter what your brain says to you, at whatever stage you are in the program, on the day that you're going to have a drink, make sure that you take your pill. If you don't, if you're in America, Katie will come and knock on your door. If you're in the UK, I'll come and knock on the door. If you're in the Hawaii, we'll both come and knock on your door. Or somewhere nice, we'll both come and knock on your door. But thank you very much again, Katie.
Thanks, Bruce. Great to see you. Bye, everyone.
We'll speak to everyone soon. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.